40 episodes. By the time I finish this episode, I will be able to say, I did it. I will have recorded a full season of a podcast on my own. This morning, I re-listened to episode 1, Imposter Pilot and Hypothesis. And today, I want to reflect on my experience podcasting so far, what I learned, and what I am considering as I think about the future of this podcast and the Hello Trauma Brain community. Also, I want to share my findings so far since I released this podcast. Hi, I am Raysa, a survivor of narcissistic abuse, and I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and you are listening to Hello Trauma Brain, a podcast where I share my experiences living with complex PTSD. My hope is this podcast can help destigmatize mental health and provide support to anyone diagnosed with C-PTSD who thinks they might have it or has a loved one with this diagnosis. Quick reminder, I am not a licensed psychologist or mental health care professional, and this podcast is not meant to replace nor substitute the care of psychologists, other mental or medical health care professionals. If you think you might have complex PTSD or PTSD, please reach out to your primary care or mental health care provider. Any individuals and resources mentioned in this episode are not sponsoring Hello Trauma Brain. This episode may reference trauma or abuse, and listener discretion is advised. Remember, you can always pause or skip this episode at any time. And now, let's get back to the episode. Hello, dear survivors, and welcome to this episode of Hello Trauma Brain. Thank you for joining me today. If you are listening on YouTube, a gentle reminder to hit the like button and subscribe to let me know this episode was helpful. So I recently learned that June 27th, which is when this podcast is scheduled to be released, happens to be National Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder Awareness Day. So I will be linking for you on the show notes some of the PTSD episodes that season 1 has, so you can either share that content or check it out if you haven't and would like to learn more about PTSD. Things felt very real when I started the setup to record this episode. I feel like I've been trying to battle like the pressure that I'm feeling in making this a big deal because it is the finale and it's just another episode. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I'm not gonna lie, when I when I started walking over to put the computer on my little setup to record, I felt it. I felt it felt big. It was like, shit, I'm recording the finale. Like, am I really recording the finale? And I think what really made it sink was realizing that this is gonna be the last time in a while and I'm gonna be doing this. And that really felt big. I was like, oh, wait, like this is the last time I'm going to be doing this and for the rest of the summer. Like, what? And yeah, I am. And yeah, this episode is officially the finale for season 1 of Hello Trauma Brain. And today I would like to talk about my experience podcasting so far. And I'm trying to resist the urge and the pressure to not forget something, and I'm trying to remind myself that this is not the end of the show. This is just the finale of the first season, which means there will be a season 2. There will be more episodes, and anything that I forget, I can talk about then. It still feels surreal to be a podcaster, and I have noticed that I've gotten more used to saying that I am a podcaster and accepting that part of myself. Something that I have been embracing with this podcast is not only that it has become an important part of my life, but the fact that I get a sense of purpose from doing this, and I feel proud of what I have produced so far. So I went back and I heard the first episode and Imposter Pilot and Hypothesis. You know, it feels like forever ago, And some of the things on that episode, I wish I could tell Raysa back then, girl, it's gonna work out. Don't worry. You will do the podcast, and it's actually going to be a transformative experience. You just wait and see. And then the other part, I hear some of the parts of the episode where I'm like, oh, I still feel that. I still feel that. And it was interesting. That episode was around 16 minutes long, a little bit over. I remember back then being very concerned or thinking that that probably was going to be like the average length of an episode. I honestly did not think I could talk for that long or longer than that, on a weekly basis. And little did I know that would be one of the few shorter episodes because I mean, some of the episodes on the season one, they're longer than 1 hour. And I would say like it's kind of averaging probably between like 30 to 45 minutes. Oh, maybe the average is more like 45 to 50 minutes long. But yeah, definitely 16 minutes. That's like now having been through pretty much almost the entire season and having the experience of having like an hour long that I'm editing down, like when I have a shorter episode, someone's like, oh my gosh, it's like a piece of cake. Like the last episode, the box breathing guided meditation, that was like what, 13, 14 minutes long. And it just, yeah, like listening to this, I was like, oh gosh, this was like only 16 minutes long. That's so short. And it went so quick listening to it too. I was like, wow. I also felt more scripted, and literally I went back and like I had a full script for that. Like I'm not as scripted anymore. I have like notes and stuff, but I feel like I have found more of a freedom in the episodes as I kept doing them. And there are some that have like no notes and they're unscripted, and those definitely were harder to edit just because I could be all over the place sometimes. And yet I want to say they were the ones that most of you resonated with sometimes. Like they were the ones that I got the most feedback from. And even hearing back the first episode, I was like, oh, I definitely like, not only was I more scripted, I sounded more scripted. And like fast forwarding to now, like I have my notes and whatnot, but I definitely have more. I don't know. I feel like I've become more comfortable with just like talking to the microphone, or expanding on the notes that I have. I would say I love podcasting. I have really enjoyed this process. I like editing. I didn't think I was going to like editing. I thought I was going to dread that part, and it was going to be like, I'm going to enjoy talking and I'm going to dread editing. And quite frankly, editing can get tedious if I am like running out of time and the episode is long sometimes. But for the most part, I actually enjoy that part too. And if I am completely honest, I already feel like I'm going to miss this podcast so much. It feels already weird to kind of grasp the concept of I'm not going to be releasing episodes for the next few weeks. And I haven't even finished the season and I'm already missing the podcast, if that makes any sense. That's how it feels like for me, because yeah, like this takes a good chunk of my week. And I almost feel like my nervous system and like, I'm just not going to know what to do with myself. But I already caught myself, like no lie, starting research on how to better podcast. And I'm already like doing a little bit of research on building the website because it's been under construction. I thought I would, finish it right after releasing the podcast, and it's still under construction. And I'm going to be dead honest, I haven't touched it. The only thing I do on that website is add the episodes so they can go out. But yeah, I started like doing some research on the website building, and I kind of have to, and it's going to be hard, but I really like, the intention that I have is I really want to take time off, and I mean completely take time off, as hard as that sounds. And it's the intention is to not post anything like after the promotion for this finale, really take a step back. Even thinking about it, even talking about it now, it's already like I'm already feeling the dread of like, oh, but what if I see a post that I want to share on a reel, and what if I want to I'm gonna try really hard. We'll see how this goes. You will find out very quickly if you see me posting or not. But the intention is to take a proper few weeks of nothing. No posting, no resharing, no recording anything, no touching the website to start working on it, no brainstorming ways that I can improve my production process for the next season. I am literally going to try as hard as I can to take a proper break from the podcast. And I think the dread comes from how abrupt it's gonna be. Like, I'm not gradually transitioning into a break. I'm just gonna take a break. And the reason I'm doing it is because it's important. It's important to give ourselves time off to sit with what we feel and to exist and to do new things, because that's the thing. Like, this podcast is has been a powerful healing tool, but if I am not careful, it can also become a bit of a coping mechanism to avoid things. And I have plenty of things that I need to catch up on and I need to do, including prioritizing rest and myself. And I'm hoping that I will be able to carry out and execute this intention. So next, I want to go back to the hypothesis from the first episode and kind of share, where I am at and what I found so far, in terms of what I predicted this podcast was going to do. So I predicted that this podcast would help me by serving as a tool to document and journal my progress and growth. And I would say it's done that. Even going back to just hear the pilot, I can hear a different Raysa in that episode as opposed to the Raysa that's tuning in today. And maybe as I gear up to start the season again, I'll start re-listening to some of the older episodes, because quite frankly, in the pilot, that there are some things in there that, like, there are some changes that have happened since then. And I know for a fact that, more things were changing as the podcast kept going. And it's all there. Like, the check-ins have a bit of that timeline. And I can go back and listen to it anytime now. It's properly documented and recorded to revisit. I predicted that it would hold me accountable. That one, I will say yes, because I was, fairly consistent, except for a few weeks where I couldn't podcast and when I did take a hiatus during the holiday season. However, I will say on that one, some of the healing invitations, I didn't follow them myself. So I feel like the accountability there didn't quite take for every single one. But I could always listen back to the episodes or go back to, the episode notes and revisit, what the healing invitation is. And I can always do it at any time. But as I stand here today, the reality is, I would say on and off. Healing invitations didn't quite make me accountable to actually doing those myself every single time. With podcasting itself, I am finishing the season, so I'll say that it did hold me accountable in that arena. Yeah, and as I think about that, I feel like I expected it to hold me more accountable, and I don't feel like... Yeah, I don't feel like it fully did. If anything, it might have distracted me from doing some other things that I was doing before the podcast that I don't have time to do now or I was not having time to do because I was podcasting instead. I also predicted that it would help me carve out time to reflect on the topics I chose for the podcast. Thinking back to what I thought it would do back then, I think I based that one more on the fact that I was taking longer to script episodes. And as I kept podcasting, I started to kind of be a little bit more free and improvisational at times. So I don't think it helped me carve out all this chunk of time I thought it would take me to, like, prepare episodes. Now, what I want to say the podcast did do, which I don't know that I fully expected this to happen, but looking back, it makes sense, is having realizations as I recorded the episodes. Like, sometimes I would be talking and I would realize things during the episodes and it would shock me. And quite frankly, I don't think I would have made those realizations had I not been recording an episode at that particular time. And actually, that what I just said is kind of linked to the next hypothesis, which is that I anticipated that it would increase my self-awareness and perhaps even lead to some realizations I would not reach otherwise. I literally just talked about that. That I would say it did do. I want to say, even hearing myself sometimes, I'm like, "Ooh, I'm doing the mood dependent behavior there. Ooh, I'm doing that over there." So it definitely, yeah, and even like increase my self-awareness in terms of changing my relationship with my voice, like realizing that I have a good voice for podcasting. And I know I've talked about this a few times, but it kind of bears repeating. Like, I really wasn't expecting that. And I feel like I would consider that an increased level of self-awareness as opposed to before, where I didn't even realize I had a good voice, period, like for talking or for podcasting or anything like that. I predicted that it would allow me to share my healing with you, and I think that it has done. Definitely not done sharing my healing. I am still very much in the process of healing, and I intend to share more on season 2. I predicted that the podcast will also be an exercise in creativity, and I would definitely say it's been that, and if anything, more. I would definitely say it's been that all throughout. It got me composing music for the background of the podcast, which I would have never in a million years thought that I could, come up with like, we'll call it a soundtrack. Like, I didn't consider myself a composer. Like, I'm trying to be like a singer-songwriter, but in terms of like the musical aspect, let's just say my confidence level in that arena is not great. And I'm proud of the music. Like now as I look back, I feel like my confidence, I'm realizing that right now, actually. I feel like my confidence has improved, and I feel proud of the music. I feel proud of the system that I have. Even like listening to the podcast, the first episode, I can hear how I improved on the sound quality of it, which is good. And hopefully I will continue to improve that for the next season for you. It definitely challenged me in terms of being creative with this podcast, and also with the promotion. That's right. I feel like even with social media, though I still wouldn't consider myself, a guru on social media. I found tools to help me do posts, and that's creativity too. Also with the YouTube thumbnails, I designed those myself. And I wouldn't say in a million years that I am a graphic designer. I have no training in graphic design. And yet, the cover art for the podcast, the stuff I'm designing for the YouTube thumbnails, that's graphic design. Who knew I could do it with no training? Okay. I thought the podcast would help me rewire some of the conditioned messages I had internalized that were basically discouraging me from trying new things or from doing things that I was not amazing at from the get-go. I would say my confidence level has improved. I wouldn't say my brain has rewired to the point where those voices are completely gone, but I'm definitely finding myself these days getting out of my comfort zone a lot more. And in fact, I kind of forgot to do like a proper check-in, I think. This past weekend, the way it has gone is I actually had people come clean the place, which has helped me tremendously with how I feel about my home, my safe space. It has helped me in terms of the phobia with the insects. And I had a friend come over, one of my chosen family members, came to visit me for the weekend, and we had a blast. We had a blast. Like, we kind of like impromptu just picked different activities, and one of them was a suggestion from my friend that was outside of my comfort zone, and I said yes, and I tried it, and I loved it. And I definitely would say that I have been exercising a lot more these days the skill of allowing myself to be a beginner. And that's something I definitely want to talk more about in season 2. I feel like the podcast was a great way to start with that process because it was personal. It was just me here, and the stakes were, just involving me. And even though right before the podcast, I was already taking some extra risks and trying new things, I feel like even now I feel more confident and secure in trying new things and getting out of my comfort zone and not living in fear and isolated. I predicted that this was going to be a huge learning curve, and boy, was I not wrong. It definitely has been. And it was already back then, but it continues to be. I was predicting that, it would be an exercise in making mistakes and tolerating the feelings that come from making mistakes. Yeah, definitely. There was like a whole episode on that. Like the first time I made a mistake on the podcast, it felt so big. It felt like this huge deal. And now, when I make a mistake, no lie, like, yeah, I want to say the last few episodes when I've heard like me messing up in there, I was like, oh, oops, I messed up that. And I just moved on to the next thing. And it didn't feel like the end of the world. And that is a different stage of my healing compared to where I was in the first, I want to say like maybe the first 10 episodes of Hello Trauma Brain. Definitely still learning. I literally, no lie, I just figured out that YouTube, you can put your RSS feed, which is basically like, in so many words, the link that allows me to just post the episode on one place, and then that link distributes it to everybody else. Like for YouTube, I was making like a separate video and uploading separately, and I literally just realized that I didn't have to do that. Or maybe, I want to say, I'm not 100% sure about this, but I want to say that wasn't available back when I released the podcast. It became available at some point during, and I just got word of it, and I think it's been around for a little bit now. But anyway, it did make releasing this past episode easier, and I'm actually excited that that's going to be part of the process, and it will definitely make season 2 easier to release. And yeah, I'm still working, with making the social media post something that's more streamable and more efficient, and that's definitely something I am looking forward to learning how to do as I continue this process. I hoped that some of the feelings I was feeling back then would lessen, and I would be able to prove to myself that I can try new things, take risks, and keep myself safe in the process. I would say it has lessened those feelings, yes. Definitely not gone completely. And I will say, I think my confidence level has improved. The imposter syndrome has decreased too. Since then, and as I have tried new things, through these past few months, including this past weekend, I would say I'm starting to really get a lot of benefit from trying the new experiences. Like there were some experiences that I tried where it was like, oof, gosh, I better not do that again. And most recently, it's been really impactful in a great and positive way. And these past experiences recently, in particular, have been. I feel like something is changing in me and is giving me more hope. I'm feeling better. I'm feeling the reality of the chances of my life actually improving, you know? I'm feeling in my body like things can actually get better, and I can actually have like a good weekend and have a great time with my friend and enjoy existing and not be in crisis all the time. It feels good. It feels so good to have that experience. And I just want more of it. And I'm starting to take in the fact that I will have to continue getting out of my comfort zone if I want more of that. And I'm planning on doing that. So, yeah, so far I would say a lot of what I predicted has come to pass. A few things are not as I think I thought it would. Maybe I was putting too many eggs on the podcast basket, thinking it would like magically solve everything. And it's it's been a process. It's been a process. With this podcast, life really got in the way, and I I had to learn, and I don't feel like I'm done learning that it is okay to continue doing the things even when life is chaotic or when things happen that are unexpected. And sometimes it is okay to take a break and reshuffle the schedule when something unexpected happens. And that happened with this podcast. There were some schedule breaks, there were some unscheduled breaks. And that's a big exercise for me to practice not ignoring the cries out from my own body to take a break and slow down. Because I am one of those people that once I commit to something, I really commit and I deliver. And even if it is to my detriment, I'm going to show up anyway. And to learn that I don't have to completely decimate myself just because I made a commitment. To understand that if, like, honestly, like, I kind of have to like think about how I would treat someone else. Like, if someone else made a commitment and they couldn't, you know, deliver on a particular week because something is going on for them, I would understand that. And to extend that same compassion and kindness to myself. Like, you all understood that. Nobody came after me complaining when I had an unscheduled break and shaming me for it and judging me for it. That has been a powerful realization. There were things that happened during the season that I was not expecting. Like, quite frankly, I thought that I would be doing solo episodes for a very long time before I even dabbled with the possibility of doing an interview. And part of it was I didn't want to make the stakes of the podcast too big at the beginning because I was so new. And I've been doing this thing completely on my own from beginning to end. And the opportunity presented itself to do an interview, and I took it, and it went really well. I really enjoyed doing the interviews. I don't have the time and the team to, make Hello to My Brain a podcast where there's interviews every week. I definitely learned so much from the guests and from the conversations that I had. And I also learned a lot about video podcasting. Like, definitely my hat goes out to people who do it, because let me tell you, it is not an easy gig, and it definitely complicates things. Like, audio for me is a lot easier to edit than when I edit the audio and now there's a video associated with the audio that needs to be synced and all that. Like, that definitely was something that led to a lot of humbling moments throughout this podcast. Also, not in a million years did I think that anybody was going to want me as a guest in their podcast. And here I am, officially able to say that I have been a guest on a podcast. Like, I just announced the release of my episode with Lauren from the Life After Discard with Lauren podcast. And that episode is called Life After Discard with Raysa. And that basically came out like barely a week ago. And I'm proud of how I did in that arena too. I surprised myself with being able to hold my ground and sound cohesive during an interview where I'm talking about all this stuff, mental health, healing from narcissistic abuse, and having complex PTSD. Where do I see Hello Trauma Brain going, and what am I envisioning for season 2? I definitely want to do more solo episodes. I have some series ideas in mind, hopefully more interviews. I do want to get the website running by the time season 2 releases, and I want to work on streamlining my process even more than I already have. I am hoping for more healing. I'm hoping for more growth. And yeah, I hope that as this podcast continues to grow, that you keep finding it helpful, like a safe place you can come back to receive not only validation that you're not making this up, this is real and it's happening and you are not alone, but also tools that can hopefully help you as you go about your own healing. I also want to start officially like doing the workshops. I have an idea for workshops and different tools and things that I can maybe start offering through some sort of subscription. Still thinking about that. It's in the radar. And I want to take this opportunity to invite you to reach out if you have any ideas for how I can improve the podcast, things you would like to hear in season 2. Please let me know. I would love your feedback. And I am actively looking for ways to improve this podcast. That being said, I want to officially thank you for being a witness, for joining me on this journey through season 1, seeing me from the beginning when the audio quality had things that needed to be worked on to now. And I'm sure there's things that I still need to work on. And witnessing how things have progressed for me, and helping this podcast grow and this community become a safe place for people like us, people that are healing from really heavy, complex trauma. It is an honor for me to be able to speak to you. I am so glad you are here. And I'm already missing you. And I cannot wait to see what happens in season 2. But for now, this wraps up my reflection on season 1. In this week's healing invitation, I want to offer you a few things to reflect about. What have you learned in the past few months? Where were you mentally a few months ago? Has anything changed? If so, how do you feel about the changes, if any? During this hiatus, I invite you to find pockets of time when you take a break from the trauma content, yes, including this podcast. We do need to take breaks and show our nervous system that we value rest and recharging. Please let me know how this week's healing invitation goes if you choose to accept it. Before we wrap up this episode, all music and production is courtesy of yours truly. Also, I want to share a few ways you can help support this podcast. You can subscribe and leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or the platform you are using to listen. Share this episode with anyone you can think can benefit from this content. Follow Hello Trauma Brain on Instagram with the handle at Hello Trauma Brain. Subscribe to the Hello Trauma Brain YouTube channel and hit the notification bell to be the first to know when I post a new episode. And you can make a donation by getting me a coffee through the official bio site. No worries, all links will be provided in the show notes. Thank you for joining me today and for being a part of Season 1. It means the world to me to know you are listening. I hope you found this episode and Season 1 helpful. I wish you the best as you continue healing. Also, as you take a hiatus with me, and I will talk to you when Hello Trauma Brain returns for Season 2 closer to the fall of 2024. It is time for our farewell affirmations. You are welcome to repeat after me. I am enough. I am lovable. And I deserve to heal. I wish you a gentle week and thank you for listening.